What is your purpose here? How many of you are there?
Welcome to Voyage of the Geek for another week. Joining me as always, Dan Miller, Tom McGill, as we... Whoa. And then,
Hello.
And then
Yes, welcome.
as we sort of navigate our way through cult classics of the...
Some with more cult and less classic.
Yeah.
All of them classic. Or old at least.
Yes.
Some of them cult due to their lack of classicness,
Yeah.
and mainly in the sci-fi, fantasy, but you know we sort of jump around quite a bit. Where we have a look at film and we try to have a look at making sense of the narrative, of the production, of what the film was all about. And this week we're having a look at a classic from 1969 from anybody of a moderate vintage. Has a soft spot for Jerry Anderson and his Thunderbird exploits and Stingray, various other sort of TV miniature sort of world builders look up to Jerry Anderson. Well, he had a foray into the motion picture world. And his first motion picture was Journey to the Far Side of the Sun. But it wasn't its first name, was it, Tom?
I think it has a different name. It's called Doppelganger.
With an umlaut over the
Yeah,
A.
yeah. It's German.
Yes. And Doppelganger is obviously, we'll talk about that during our breakdown of the film. But as always, how did we find the film as far as when did you come across this one? Is it something you found early on, or is it only as late as the last few weeks that you came across this one?
Never heard of it till Tom mentioned it the other day.
And I didn't know the title.
That's right.
All I knew that there was a film where they traveled to the other side of the sun because there was an anti-Earth.
When did
Opposite
what
Earth.
were we looking at where it came up in conversation? What was the other film that we were looking at?
It was a couple of
Probably the
weeks
one
ago.
where they leave the Earth, where they
When Worlds Collide.
when worlds
When
collide.
Worlds
Yeah,
Collide.
that's right.
And
yes.
Tom, you initially thought that it might have been this film.
I thought it was this one. Yeah.
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 And so you went on the hunt, and with limited success initially.
There aren't that many films, but there's a few. There's like a handful of films that deal with opposite Earths and
Yeah,
on the other side of the sun.
yeah.
Oh, there are more than one.
Yeah, stories especially. There's this. Well, if you look at the Wikipedia, there's short stories. There's how many times it came up in some sort of TV episode, whether it be
I'm
Doctor
sure it's
Who
in Star
or it's
Trek or something or other.
probably
it's-
not in Star
it's-
Trek.
No, there's definitely an alternate negative universe in a.
There's a mirror universe in
There's a
Star
mirror
Trek,
universe
but there's
in-
not two planets Earth
Oh no
around the sun.
no, that's right.
Mm.
So anyway, the plot, the
We don't say enough that we're going to do spoilers. Everything's going to be spoiled.
oh, absolutely.
yeah, we sometimes forget
we do.
and then just blather on.
I was just keen to see the ending of the film because I remember seeing it decades ago and not seeing the end of it because I was somehow interrupted.
Blink and you'll miss it.
Interesting.
We'll certainly get to that.
Yeah,
The-
interesting.
The ending is
Interesting.
pretty abrupt.
Yeah, the ending's interesting. I'm going to have some things to say when we
That's
get
right.
to the ending.
It's very non-Hollywood, the ending as well.
Oh, it's a great ending.
When it comes to the,
I liked it.
It's very European ending. European movies had the balls to spoilers, kill off the good guy and do sorts of
I saw that coming, but we can get there. I mean, they had
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
There was the way the plot developed. I thought that they would probably have to go
and they were running out of film time.
and kill off the good guys. The fact that they just kill off everything, that was
Yeah.
well.
Yep. So the breakdown in IMDb is the European Space Exploration Council sends 2 astronauts to explore a planet similar to the Earth, but located on the opposite side of the sun. So the theory of the film is that we don't know that this planet is there because it's in an absolute perfect orbit that matches Earth, but it's on the other side of the sun, and so we never get to see it.
Makes perfect sense.
Now, how's the science break down with that, Tom? Is that something that can happen?
People have looked for it. Humans have
Yeah.
have looked for those things.
Is there a
You can-
way we would find it?
Yeah, you would totally see it just by its gravity. You would see it how it influences gravity of the other planets. So you would see how it influences the orbit of Mars.
It
the
would it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because
Like-
our orbit gets influenced by Mars and Jupiter as well.
Does it really?
Yeah,
Like
you can measure that. And you can anticipate
Neptune,
that.
I think, was it Neptune or Uranus was actually discovered through maths.
Oh, okay.
Nobody ever looked at it.
Yeah, it's
You
Neptune.
couldn't see it.
Neptune?
Yes.
Yeah, so some dude, and I think it was as amazing as some dude said, go out your window today, point the telescope over there and have a look.
Yeah.
And he went over and there's a friggin' planet right there. So, yeah.
They found it within a day, I think, or the first time to look once they had the maths right. They had many attempts,
Yep.
and then when they finally got the maths right, they found it immediately.
So, yeah, there's that. So, but anyway.
We'll circle back to the miniature stuff and the Thunderbird-esque feel of the film, production-wise, after we have a look at the narrative.
Okay.
But as we normally we use the narrative to progress through the film, and Dan sort of carries us through the story beats. We burden him with the. We just sit and watch the film.
I have to friggin' remember it.
Dan has to actually take
In
notes.
fact, you get us to recall bits of it,
Yeah,
then we
yeah.
can chime in.
Yeah, and we just pretend that we know what you're talking about. And yeah, of course I saw that in the film.
Yeah, I should try one day to not just watch the show and try to fool you and everyone else into having seen it.
Maybe I should just make up some stuff and say, yeah.
It don't-
Remember when the
I can tell you,
dinosaurs
it doesn't end well.
erupted out of the volcano?
I've fallen asleep in one of the films before and missed about half an hour of it,
Yeah.
and I came undone when we started to talk about it.
Wasn't worth
it
going back.
No, it doesn't end well. All right, Dan, so where do we start with this one?
Okay, so this story, so I've broken it up into a 3-act structure plus an intro. The story is fairly straightforward, which is kind of starting to see a pattern emerge. When we look at stories today, there's 9 stories and subplots, and there's all sorts of side quests.
The pacing that this film had, which is honestly the first time that I've watched a film at 1.3 speed.
Yeah.
I always watch them at normal speed. I can't bear speeding them up. With this one, I had to.
Yeah.
I just had to. So with the pacing that this film had, there was absolutely no allowance for another storyline. They needed all those 90, 120 minutes or 380 minutes, how long it was.
Yeah.
To carefully squeeze
just get
that
that one.
story out
Yeah.
as thin as possible so that it would,
Yep.
So, yes, it possibly doesn't have one story. It has 0.86 of a story.
Yes.
Carefully, stretched Anyway, so it's fairly simple in that sense. There's sort of one story. Okay. So it starts with an intro, and the intro is really awesome. Oh, do you want to play the intro music?
I've got some music from it. Yes.
So I love the intro music. This is the first thing you see in the movie. Play 30 seconds.
It's so Thunderbirds. Every episode of the Thunderbird starts with that music, and it's normally an establishing shot of some kind of mining operation or something, or a building that is about to catch on fire by the end of the episode or something. But it's always an establishing shot of where the problem is going to happen for the episode. And it's the same. It's always the same. You get this barricos, low-end stuff with trombones and stuff like that. And then in comes the violins, and there's always this... and then there's this when it comes back from a commercial, or we come back from the Tracy Island, there's always harps that sort of...
And as we were saying before, in these 60s things, you have to have these insane bongo drums going ballistic in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very symphonic, quite huge, but it's so signature to that
time period.
that Thunderbirds feel.
That atomic feel.
James Bond as well.
A little bit James Bond. Yeah, absolutely.
It's also got
It's the
hints
60s.
It's also got hints of theremin in there. That sort of
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember hearing the theremin.
Hints
in
of theremin sounds like a
hints
recipe.
of
You can hear it there
theremin. I'm
now.
serious. It's got hints of theremin in there.
there. There it is. Oh, you missed it.
Anyway. So
Yes.
that gets you right in the mood.
It does.
In that atomic sci-fi
That's
mood.
sci-fi, and the world is pretty cool. It's pretty cool to look at.
So we start off.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a high security, place with computers,
Yep.
and the computers have magnetic tapes,
Yep.
On them, and there's lots of lights.
Lots of shoving in.
yeah,
things into-
yeah. And there's like 6 buttons in
yeah.
a little grid on a panel somewhere.
That's right. And to cross the security barrier, you have to go and stand behind
An X-ray
machine.
that shows all your bones.
and your pen doesn't show your belt or your buttons or anything else.
Your pen. All right, so a dude comes in to go through all this security rigmarole.
And who's the dude?
Who's the dude?
Who's the dude in cinema history?
Commissioner Dreyfus.
Yes.
Inspector Clouseau's boss. I love him.
Yeah.
I love watching him fall apart through
Yeah.
the progression
Twitching eye.
of the films.
Yeah.
Where he starts those films completely sane, and by the end of them, he's a madman who wants to take over the world.
I remember I used to feel so sorry for that guy.
For
I just
Dreyfus.
just came apart at the seams. It was a mess at the end.
So he's at a security checkpoint, submitting himself for security searching, etc.
So it turns out what they want to do is they want to read a file that's stored in this security vault.
Yeah.
They want
Okay.
to. They want to. He's a spy, isn't he?
Well, it also then turns out.
Oh yeah.
So
You're not there yet. You're not revealing the.
on tier 1 level, he's just trying to get in there, and there's like 1,000 of these kind of metal books, and they pull one off. This is before
Well,
USB drives
they're
or anything.
metal boxes that have
Books inside them,
paper inside it, but literally sort of photocopies of.
and then they have schematics, electronic schematics, and he's like, yes.
Well, he's doing this, and I didn't realise till
Yeah,
later in the
so-
movie
yeah.
he's actually when he taps his head, he's because spoilers, he has a camera in his eyeball.
Well, it's not too
instead
much.
of an eyeball.
Not too much of a spoiler because we find that out 30 seconds later.
Yeah, that's right. So the reason he can get past security is that he doesn't need any apparatus. It's built into one of his eyes. He's got a glass eye, and then inside the eye is a camera, and he's tapping on his forehead to take photos of the
Yeah.
documents as he's looking.
All right, so he takes photos of the documents, and it was obviously all a ruse. He says, so yes, Barry, what's the capacitance of the inverted, whatever, and then they check, and then the guy who's taking the photo says, oh yes, you were correct.
You were
So
correct.
that's okay. Let's now leave. And then he goes and proceeds. It was a strange jump cut because then instantly after we finished that, he's somehow back in his apartment in an
It was a bit of a
Instacut.
confusing start because not only, but maybe I have some disease that doesn't let me recognize faces or something. But I got really confused between Dreyfus and the other guy who
guy
is
that's
the
in
actual,
charge.
and because they wore the same coat. They're both wearing a brown coat and they have got some sort of facial hair.
Yeah, that's
I'm
And
a simple
had
guy. I'm
and-
a simple guy.
There's a name
You
for
have
that.
a brown
No, you
coat,
can't-
crippling brown coat disease.
I'm the guy who got yeah. Anyway, but they also have this sort of new thing. They introduce a heartbeat monitor, and they only introduce it on those two guys. Apparently everybody else has that in the world too. But they introduce it to the one guy that sort of beeps when he gets excited. The heartbeat monitor starts racing up, and he takes his pills and he calms down again. But then
okay, yeah,
later
yeah,
on,
yeah.
when the other guy gets killed, you see the monitor going beep beep beep,
Ah, that's right.
and then
yeah.
it's end.
That's right, when he
has
dies.
The watch thing that they have, and they only have it on those two guys who to me look very similar.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time figuring out now because I know this is a doppelganger film. I know that there is, and I was thinking, are we now witnessing? Are we filming one planet? Are we actually? Is it going to be revealed that we were on the opposite planet the entire time, and we are seeing both at the same time?
Well, I can tell you.
I figured it out eventually.
I can tell you, that's all you.
Yeah, that's me being easily distracted.
This is you 30 seconds into the movie. It's like
it.
What's going
overanalyzing.
Is this too much?
So there's a jump cut that takes us to his photographic development room somewhere.
Yep.
Perhaps it's in a hotel room or something or other. And he opens up a case, and they've made all of this cool tech stuff. He's got this
He's
case.
got spare eyeballs,
Yeah.
little pockets for spare eyeballs, and I love his little technique, which was to take the eyeball out, right, put it on the end of a long spinning
Rod.
It's like a
like a
screwdriver,
spinning screwdriver
auto thing.
with a screwdriver with a motor sort of thing.
Yeah.
They puts the eyeball on top, and he's got like 4 little tiny bucket things.
Development fluids.
Yeah, and he spins the eyeball in one, and then he spins it in the next, and then when it gets to the end, he blow dries it off, and then he puts it on a projector and projects light through it.
He's got like this laser beam projector thing that comes up, and he clips the eyeball on the end, and it projects all of the secret info up on the wall.
So we see what he has. He's got all the top secret stuff from his trip to the vault.
So he's stolen all that.
Right.
And I just about that time at the movie, and now we're only a minute into the movie, and I was like, yes, I love this movie.
Yeah.
Because they just put so much effort in. I can imagine all of the guys that made all of that equipment and all of that stuff.
And it reminds me, like in the Thunderbirds, whenever they do close-ups of panels, they use real hands. Like, and the details. Like, so when they used to do Thunderbirds, you were doing either miniatures or you were doing life-size stuff for those close-ups where you would see a dial being turned or a switch being switched off or whatever, and they were real hands. It looked exactly like one of those cutaway shots from whenever he was doing something in front of the camera. And you can tell that there's a stylistic mentality that's drifting into this film from Jerry Anderson's past.
They made this film. This is one of their sort of the tail end of their productions. So this is after the Thunderbirds.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. He was trying to break into film for a long time.
All right, so that's the intro, and that's done. That's out of the way. And then there's the opening credit sequences, which for some reason they decide to go on for ages explaining who the hairdresser was and what type of lipstick they used and who was the clipper boy and the best grip and all of that. That goes on for bloody ages.
Well, did you notice at the end of the film there was nothing? Like there was no credits at all.
That's
That's not uncommon for films from
that era.
Yeah.
So they
Well,
put it
when
all
the
up front.
40s and 50s and so on always ended, and the 60s they probably had more end credits.
They literally say the end and then black.
Yeah, we're out. Interesting. All right, so we hit the first act, and we're going to meet one character who's pretty important. He's possibly the main character.
Yeah.
And what's his name? His name is Jason.
Jason Webb.
Jason Webb, right?
Played by Patrick Wymark.
So,
and if you close your eyes, he's just got that British narrator's voice. When you watch the film, you can hear his voice and you can hear him. I think he played a lot of Romans in a lot of swords and sandals movies and stuff like that. But yeah, he's been in a lot of film. Patrick Wymark.
So he's going to play like the boss of NASA, but
the
it's not
English
NASA.
version
it's
of NASA.
The English version, right?
Yeah,
it's what's it called? Euro something or other.
It's called European Space Exploration Council. So
Eurosec, something like that. Yeah. So what's his actual character? Would you describe? Give me some words that describe his character.
Oh, the type of. Well, I think he's pretty cutthroat. Like he's a bit of a bulldog.
He's a bull. That's a good word. Bulldog. Yeah, he's a bit of a bulldog.
Yeah.
He's very pushy.
Yep.
He's got a fairly short temper. Not that he gets hyper angry, but he seems to be pissed off most of the time.
Well, he puts high expectations on people.
Yeah, once he gets things done.
Pretty shirty when they don't meet his high expectations.
Yeah.
He nearly kills one of his mates later on, the scientist guy who he forces to go on the mission. We'll get to that later.
He kills him by looking at him. He looks at him and then the guy dies.
Oh, no, that's later.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to highlight that it's a bit of a strange character to be the main kind of hero. Not really hero, but he's like the central character because he's a bit of a jerk.
He's the driving force.
He's certainly central to the narrative, isn't he? Everyone else is peripheral to his. He starts the process and then he's right at the end.
We follow him all. It's really kind of his story, though he doesn't do the actiony bits. He's so that's pretty interesting. All right, so we're going to start with the big NATO meeting. Beep.
That's right.
And there's going to be they've got a setup a bit like what we have here.
That's right. It's all ready to go for podcasting.
Yeah. They're in the future of 1998 or something or other. That's
so it's a room of televisions.
Yes.
With obviously 2 cameras for the 2 guys. So it's a room of televisions specifically built for 2 people and a whole bunch of people on the other parts of the world.
Yeah. And I liked how when they talk, they had to press a button, which kind of gave them control of the microphone.
Right.
So it was like, click, hello, hello. And then the other guy would go, click. Now then, I want to talk about something.
It puts the camera on them, I guess. It's the editing. It's
maybe.
real live editing.
All right. So we don't mess around.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they say that we found a planet on the other side of the sun. We send off a satellite and there's a bloody planet on the other side of the sun.
Yep.
So the basic plan is they're saying, you know, we're going to need a little bit of money to send a rocket ship over there.
Yep.
And so how much money? It's $3,000 billion or
They're in
something.
thousands
Or
of
other.
billions. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, right? And I could be way off. I was always led to believe that we have a different understanding of what a billion is to what the Yanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do the Yanks think a billion is?
I think
Is it It's 1,000 million is a billion to the Yanks.
yeah, there's 10 to the power of 6 is a million, right?
Yeah.
10 to the power of 9 is the next order of magnitude. Well, it's the next 1,000.
Well, you just
triple.
made it way more complicated for me by bringing
Three. Oh,
Powers up.
we jump three orders of magnitude. Oh,
you
three
can,
zeros.
You can have $999 million in the Americans, but you can't have 1,000 million.
Okay.
Well, 1,000 million
Is a billion.
is
to
a
them.
billion.
And now, is that a billion to us as well?
I would have guessed that's what it would be.
Because
There's a
somewhere on the
difference.
planet,
No, there's a difference.
people see a billion as a different denomination. Like it's not 1,000
It's got-
million.
No, for example, in Germany. So we have a million, and then you add another 3 zeros, which is 10 to the power of 9, which is a milliard,
Ooh.
and then 10 to the power of 12 is a billion,
Which
and
would
then
mean
10 to the power of 15 is a billiard.
now
that makes
does
sense.
that mean it's 10,000 million?
I need
a
a
billion?
pencil and a sheet of paper to answer that question.
And IT computers, both with Google.
Because
I need a differential analyzer.
I think it might be the same in the UK, right? I think it might be the same in Europe in general. Is that a billion? If you're a billionaire in Europe, you're a hell of a lot richer than
Uh-huh.
you're a billionaire in the States. But I think our billionaires are the same as the Yanks.
Yeah, I think
I
1,000 million is a billion. Yeah, that's the English.
To us,
I think it's in all of in English as well as in Australian.
Yeah.
Or in American.
yeah.
Well, the guy said a 3,000 billion pounds,
Yeah.
which seems a little excessive, actually, for anything, actually.
But it's the future, and the writers took inflation into account.
We'll need space diamonds for this. All right, so you know, the European guys say,
Oh,
nah,
they laugh at the idea.
yeah, nah.
It's
nah.
ridiculous. It's fobbed off immediately. But what was really important was the reaction of the NASA guy, and the Dr. Kane. So in the live portion of the meeting is the head of the European Space Agency, Jason Webb, and then Kane, John Kane, who is the physicist that's in charge of the program.
Yeah.
He notices the reaction of the NASA guy, and he makes point of, well, it doesn't really matter what they think, it's what he thinks, and his reaction was not good when he heard the figure.
Yeah, the Americans.
So the meeting didn't go well.
So the meeting didn't go well. And it's a bit of a pattern. I think in Worlds Collide, the UN was bloody useless as well in that and didn't want to pay for anything.
And what's the one with the sky's on fire? The Van Allen belt's on fire? The UN once again.
Journey to this
Let's do
deep sea
nothing.
thing.
Yeah.
And they all die.
So anyway, it's a bit of a trope. So they're going to need the Americans to help. So they basically invite the American ambassador in or whoever it is, and they ask for a shit ton of cash from him, and he basically turns them down as well.
Yep.
All right. So the next story beat is a discussion that they have in the office, and I want to highlight also that another thing that I loved about the movie was there was tiled floors everywhere. And everybody has hard shoes.
And turtlenecks. Everybody's
And
wearing turtlenecks.
And skivvies,
The
yes.
entire
and skivvies.
future is full of men wearing turtlenecks.
Yes.
And even when there's sort of jackets, wing collar jackets, there's a turtleneck underneath the jacket. And those pants that go like that, they're really skinny at the ankles, which will come back in fashion.
Well, I love the sound because in this, you know, there's tiled floors
Yes.
and all the women have hard shoes and all the guys have hard shoes. So there's all this clop, 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 clip, clip, clop, clop, as everybody moves around.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's really iconic.
Which is probably exactly what it sounded like at NASA
Yes, it probably did.
in the 60s.
Actually, it reminds me of Jacques Tardy. Anybody?
No.
Jacques Tardy?
No.
No?
No, that's just, you're just putting letters in a match.
That's French. The French will be pissed off that they're Anyway, Jacques Tati, but we'll talk about that later. So Americans are the only hope. And then the next one is there's been a security leak.
That's right.
This is important story beat.
The big kahuna, Jason Webb, knows that there's a security leak.
There's a security leak.
He mentions it to the NASA guy when they're in their meeting when NASA turned them down and said, look, our answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, look, there is what are we going to do when somebody else goes before we do to the other planet?
Yep.
And the NASA guy says, well, who else knows about it? No one else can know about it. And he declares, no, we have a security leak. So it sounds to me like they hadn't confirmed a security leak, but they suspect.
I think you actually skipped a story beat there.
They suspect one.
They suspect yes, exactly. They suspect a security leak.
Yeah.
And what does Jason do when his head of security turns up with his skivvy and his James Bondy look? And the guy says, I think we have a security leak.
Yeah.
And Jason says, feed him more information.
Yeah, don't remove his restriction.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you find that it's him, don't arrest him.
Yes.
Now, I thought what he meant by that is don't arrest him, let him keep releasing stuff. He didn't mean that, did he?
No. So
what did he mean?
They're chasing the security leak. They found the security leak, chasing the security leak, and Jason, our hero, says, if you find him, don't arrest him. Know what I mean? Nudge, nudge, wink, 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 wink.
Which I still took as let him go. Let him keep doing it.
Yeah, he let him go. He let him go to it better.
Yeah.
So we cut to Inspector Dreyfus with his eyeball
watching
popped
his
out.
eyeball projector.
yeah. Checking out his projector again.
Giving it the one-eye review session.
And then, like, the door bursts open and you see a gun pulled out of a jacket.
That's right.
And they kill the shit out of him.
That's right. But we get to see the killer. Right when you think, oh, this could be a bit of a whodunit, who took him out.
Yeah.
Because I was so surprised that it was the security guy when the camera sort of pans around and reveals that it's the...
Yeah, sort of James Bondy polishing his
then my
Walther
brain
PPK
goes,
and sticks it back in his jacket.
That's what he meant by don't arrest him.
So this movie has some kind of weird tones that go on. This is Jason,
I agree.
our hero, in charge of NASA, who's essentially executing people.
Yep, I agree.
All right. So, but there might also be a sort of a... there's probably a method to his madness because now he can use that as leverage on the Yanks.
Yeah.
He can say that, there's been a security leak and if somebody else gets to the planet before we do, you won't be able to rip it off. They'll rip it off. And so the Americans come around and say, yeah, all right, we'll give you
He did the one thing that could bring the whole thing undone. Like, you go to NASA and you say, we now know that it's a security leak. Oh, okay. How do you know? It was this guy. Rightio. So, when can we question him?
Yeah, I know. When can we get some more information? We want some confirmation.
He's dead.
Yes. Don't worry. We've taken care of all of that.
Yeah.
We can go straight to the...
It's like, oh, well, if that's the case, here's $1 trillion.
Yeah. Oh, in that case. All right. So the Americans pay up all of the money, but they have one stipulation.
One of their pilots has to go.
That's right. We want an American on that ship.
And Jason Webb doesn't really have much of a problem with that.
Yes.
Initially, he doesn't really care.
Because they want the best of the best of the best of the best.
Yep.
And that would be, what's his
An
name?
American. Colonel Glenn Ross.
Colonel Glenn Ross.
Yes.
Glenn Rowan, Glenn Ross.
Okay, so we don't mess around.
Yes.
Glenn Ross just arrives on a ship.
Mm.
And when I say a ship...
And what kind of an
yeah, when I say a ship, I don't mean a ship. I mean a ship.
The arrival was brilliant.
Yeah.
Where picture a 747 set in 50 years' time, coming in and hover landing, and then some kind of other vehicle
It's like a
drives
crane.
up behind it.
Like a crane that...
The fuselage comes down and rests on this truck-like thing, but not
Yeah.
before the actual driving cab for this vehicle raises up, lets the thing, and then rises down so it can drive underneath. That whole mechanism is so that it doesn't back out from underneath the plane. It can now drive through the underneath, and then the mechanism rises back up so he can see where he's driving. That whole raising, lowering thing is specifically so that it doesn't have to back up 20 feet
yeah.
and then drive off.
Well, the whole sequence is specifically so that the people don't have to put foot on the runway,
Exactly.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
get traveled another 20 meters and then can disembark.
We could literally have cut a hole in the terminal perfectly so that the plane could go into the terminal.
Yeah, the nose of
and
the
then they
plane.
just walk out. But it was so Jerry Anderson,
Yeah,
wasn't
absolutely. So over the top.
it? So Thunderbirds.
So yeah, and you can just imagine because it was so sort of intricate and it was all cool and it was well done and
Yep.
this sort of transformer thing going
I
on.
thought the
and
smoke and fire effects were on a new level in this film.
yeah, they were definitely very, very good.
They were much more
Yeah.
believable, especially the jet fire
Mm.
that was coming out of some of the rockets.
Yeah, they did that really well.
Mm.
So that's how good old what is it,
Ross?
Glenn
Ross.
Glenn Ross arrives.
Played by Roy Thines.
So the next story beat is they have
Finnis.
a little bit of a party, you know, for his arrival.
He turns up with his wife,
Oh, he turns up with his wife. That's
played
right.
by his wife.
Oh, was it actually
Oh,
his
right.
wife?
Played by Roy Finnis's actual wife. Originally, it was supposed to be played by a different actress, but she pulled out at the last minute. And so the wife of the actor, the Colonel Glenn Ross, was an actress as well. And so she said, "Oh, I'll do it."
Awesome.
Yeah. So when he's slapping her around later in the movie, giving her the Sean Connery,
yeah.
it was his real wife.
All right, so there's a welcome party,
Yes.
and we're going to need another astronaut. So there's a very quick little important scene.
It's a very bizarre scene because the Jason Webb gets up, calls the scientist over, John Kane, takes
Who's
him
like
aside,
Carl Sagan or something,
takes him
rather.
aside.
He's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this Carl.
He's a physicist.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Takes him aside, you know. He doesn't want anyone. He takes him out of earshot of anyone, and they're sort
Yeah.
of they shoot the shot through a mesh grill.
Yeah,
thing.
while they're all drinking cocktails out of coconuts and things,
and he's making out like we really need to put a special.
we need a
astronaut.
specialist on the.
You know, someone, you know, and he made it out like it was very important that we have our man on, and then he says, and it should be you, but nothing really. There's no real reason why he is that guy. Is there?
Well, he said that we needed an astrophysicist.
Just
so we
in
need a
case.
science boffin on the trip.
Just in case there's something.
In case
find something.
somebody
at the-
needs
at
to
the other
read a
end.
protractor or something or other.
Because he's
Yeah.
the boss, the
Yeah.
Jason Webb is the boss. He can just nominate somebody and he goes on
Yeah.
the journey. There's no selection criteria.
So
But the problem is that guy.
So nepotism.
What's that guy's name? See, I can't even remember his name. John Kane.
John Kane.
He didn't really even stand out when he was in a shot by himself.
No, he was
You know?
meant to be a throwaway because you need to have a disposable person.
Hmm.
So right at the start, either he is going to be another spy who's supposed to kill Glenn Ross, but then fails and dies,
Yeah.
or he's simply a throwaway so that we can have somebody
A
crash.
red shirt.
Yeah, he's a red shirt from the
Well,
start.
Man,
Yeah.
he gets.
I was a bit confused by him, to be honest with you.
He gets the short straw, really. Like, he is pizzled right through the training process, because he's not an astronaut. He doesn't. The other guy, the American, he's sort of used to the whole
Yeah.
the centrifuge training and
Yeah.
the speed toboggan training and
On
all
the
this
rocket
sort of
toboggan.
rocket
and-
toboggan
yeah,
training.
with his shirt off and
With
a
his shirt
thousand
off.
wires.
And I thought, like that's a unique decision, because that's what NASA does. It puts astronauts in rocket toboggans without their shirts on.
yeah. And then when they're whizzing him around, so they have to train him, right?
Yeah,
So this is
that's
what
right.
they're doing. So they take this poor old Carl Sagan physicist and they stick him in this centrifuge and
Crank it.
yeah, and they spin it up to 1,000. It's up to 800 or something, and they're going,
Yeah.
okay, that's enough. Let's turn it off. And Jason walks in and says, no, let it go.
Keep going.
Keep going. You know,
You got to have that. You'll kill him, goddamn you.
Yeah. She gotta take it, Captain. And then So I'm not sure what that was all about, but he was probably trying to test him or something or other.
Yep.
All right. So John's having a very stressful thing, and then we see this odd little scene where Glenn and his wife. We get a little bit of home life.
I
with
thought it was
Glenn
funny.
and his wife.
There is a bunch of stuff in this film that were telegraphed to the audience, right? Very first, when we meet the wife and the husband, when the Colonel Glenn turns up at the airport with the wife, he's introduced to a bunch of people, right? He's introduced to Jason Webb, the big kahuna. He's not introduced to John Kane. I don't think he's there at the airport.
No, I think he is there. It's just that he's such an invisible character that you
you
never
might be right.
notice.
You might be right.
You
He's
never
just standing
notice.
off to the side.
Yeah.
He's introduced to the chief of security, the guy that put a couple
James
of
Bond
bullets
dude,
into
yeah.
the guy with the white turtleneck, with the gun-toting white turtleneck guy. And he's introduced to the little wet blanket German actress that I think this is the only English movie that she's been. Massive career.
Oh, right.
But it's
okay.
all German titles all the way
Okay,
down.
okay.
You would know her, Tom,
Loni
maybe.
von Friedel. Maybe I should
Yeah,
know. Huh?
Loni von Friedel.
Loni von Friedel.
She played Lisa Hartman.
Yeah.
And there was the one weird standout person in the group. He was like their PR marketing guy.
yeah.
And he moved across the group and went and stood next to the wife.
Yes.
And I remember looking at that saying, that couldn't be that obvious that we're now going to have some sort of affair or something with that guy. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Because she comes home later. She comes home late and he's already at home lying on the bed. And she's dropped off by him, who's taken her out
I didn't notice that.
touring and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, because I did notice that was weird as
They're
well.
up to no good.
Because, that PR guy, he's like, here's Glenn and here's Glenn's wife. And he says, why, hello.
He just moves across and stands next, like he's over here, and he moves
and
across
Glenn's standing on the other side of
Yeah.
his wife.
But that's normal for these films. Real men smoke, drink, and fornicate.
Like in the last one, they're just snogging in a helicopter flying across the...
That's it.
All right. So, yes, then they get into a bit of a fight. And we have the discipline moment.
So what's the purpose? Like, this story is about finding a planet on the other side of the sun
Yes.
that we must endeavour to go and explore.
Because it's a science fiction movie.
So what's the fight about?
The fight is about the fact that they can't have kids because he's got a limp willy. And
But he
she's
doesn't.
hassling him.
But he doesn't.
But
Right?
he thinks that she's taking contraceptive pills, and
Which
that's
he's got evidence of.
which he's got evidence of.
He's holding the packet of pills
Yeah.
in his hand.
And then she calls him a bastard or something or other.
And I think the final straw was when she said, it's not my fault if my husband went to space and came back half a man or less of a man.
Yeah.
That's Sean Connery. And every time I see a scene like that in that era of film, I'm reminded of that interview with Sean Connery where he just blatantly looks down the camera and says, sometimes women deserve a bit of a slap. And I think it was only the 80s or something when he said it. But he comes, because Connery beats the shit out of women in the old James Bond movies, and A Man with a Golden Gun and things like that. He's actually beating women up so that they give him information. And so yes, there's fisticuffs with the wife.
Who falls down onto the shag pile carpet.
That's right.
And I love the sound effect. Obviously, they don't actually hit anybody, right? So it's pretend. So they put in a fake sound effect, and it's always the cheesiest clap noise. It's the...
Yeah. Yeah.
But Spencer Terence Hill thing.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so that brings to conclusion the first act. And the stage is now set. Oh, no, we had one other scene, which we can't go past, and that was everybody went down to look at the rocket. So we're going to go fly across the other side of the sun, and we're going to do it. And we've now chosen the astronauts, and they go down to the viewing platform to look at the rocket.
Inside the big indoor sort of
They've got
construction.
a building that kind of splits apart so that the rocket can come out. And,
I thought that was pretty NASA. That was
it was bloody epic.
Yeah, that was... But this is 1969.
same
that film, right?
year.
So exactly...
In fact,
yeah.
the tagline is "Man has conquered the moon with the epic Apollo 11 flight. Now take another momentous journey." And so that's an actual movie poster. from
Okay,
the
well,
day.
we didn't do the tagline. You have to do the other tagline, but remember that there's going to be some rhyme. So I'll let you.
You will meet yourself face to face when Earth meets its duplicate in outer space.
And where else would it meet another planet? In outer space.
The cat in the hat is back.
And I like the artwork as well. There's like the Earth, and there's like another Earth, peeking out. Hello.
Did you ever see Amazon Women on the Moon? It's a spoof.
Yeah.
It's a National
I've heard of
Lampoon's,
it.
I think. Yeah. And they land on the moon for the first time, and they get a call from the president, and the president introduces himself. "This is President Cooper of the United States on the planet Earth." Calling the moon rocket.
All right, so we're heading into Act 2. And, get some of those images cycling. They're really cool. So the first one I've got here, the first story beat, is cool miniature rocket launch.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The detail is pretty impressive. I've got some images that'll come past, and you'll see that it's about a 6 foot
It must
tall
be very
rocket.
big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty big.
Yeah.
And all the gantry and the cables.
And those fuel lines.
And it's not just the miniatures, it's that stuff. It's the fact that there's smoke coming out, and it's that smoke that drops.
Yeah,
it's heavier than
steamy.
air, sort of.
Sets us up for a big problem in the plot later on.
Is it?
Well, they have this big ass rocket to get off
Yeah.
for the planet.
How do you get home?
How do you get home? All they're left with is this tiny little landing ship, and in fact, later in the film, that's all they need to get.
Yeah. It's kind of.
No.
Well, you got to spend that $3,000 billion somehow.
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing's a scam.
Anyway, they've got little elevators that go up inside the miniature, and then they've got little tiny people, which are obviously little tiny, things on a little stick that gets pulled across, so there's little people walking around and everything. Oh, it's bloody awesome.
It's sort of a culmination of years of miniature work brought to bear with a cinematic budget, and it looked like it. It was impressive. All of the shots look fantastic.
That was all of their skills all put together. Oh, there they are with their space car. They've got a space car as well.
It was
we didn't
impressive.
talk about the space car.
Yeah, the space car was the future. So what?
Well, it's not really space. It's a future car.
It's future car. And what is the future? Like what is it?
Doors open up ways.
50 years out, or is it 100 years out?
I imagined it was because it was filmed in 1969. So I remember that's 1998. It's like
it probably would have been, wouldn't it?
40 years.
They would have
30
been
years
thinking
in the
sort of
future.
40 years into the future.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they be disappointed?
Yeah, I know. Where's my damn rocket car?
Nothing. We didn't get any of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so they blast off into space, and when they go up into space, what's the next thing that they do?
They go to sleep.
They have a bit of a snooze.
That's right.
They got these helmets put on, which are so intensely foam cushioned on the inside. They're like motorcycle helmets. You put them on, except these helmets are screwed onto your neck and you can't do anything with your head. And then it makes sense because there's pillows. Those are the pillows inside. So they just go into the spaceship and they say, no, I'm going to inject myself with some sleep serum.
Yep.
Through this
special, they have ports in their wrists.
They've had ports grafted into their actual arms for this transfusion of whatever it is. And obviously your waste goes out and gets cleaned, and then because you die, wouldn't you? Like your kidneys, because you're not going into stasis. You're not going in. You're not being frozen.
Ah, so that nourishes them.
It's
I guess
it's a kidney
dialysis,
dilation.
but also
It's a
brings in
dialysis
nutrients.
machine.
Yeah, I guess so.
It'd have to be.
So they're kind of going into a bit of a hibernation. Now, this kind of leads to a bit of an odd point.
Or
How
totally
long?
atrophy. In 3 months.
Yeah, you'd be.
They say how long did it say? 3 months
I
or 3
thought it
weeks?
was
It's
couple
3
of
weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like 3 weeks to get to the other side.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe you'd get bored just sitting there for 3 weeks. So, screw it.
It's a small
We'll just
capsule. Those two guys don't know each other very well yet, so let's better put them to sleep.
run out of things. They'll do a dark star and start doing knife things with their hands, and throwing things at each other and annoying each other. All right, so then there's a kind of a montage. Time has passed. They actually
something Flash Gordon about the montage with the cloudy swirl.
Well, that's what we get into. Yeah, that's the next thing. Is we go into the trippiest dream sequence that you ever did see.
It's the 60s.
The Beatles would be impressed.
Yep.
Stanley Kubrick in his 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we do that.
Yep.
So this is where I think the emotional tone of the movie is starting to, and this is where we were saying that it's drawn out because it really starts to slow down at this part of the movie.
It really does.
Especially when they wake up, they have to transfer to the lander, right?
Yeah,
Which is like a plane,
Yeah.
right? It's like a space shuttle that's parked in the back of the orbiting craft.
Transport thing.
And for a movie that has a fairly slow pace to it,
We're going to slow it right down.
Fuck me. Zero gravity, right? Zero gravity on a budget usually just means
In slow
just
motion.
really fucking like those scenes from 2001: A Space Odyssey. You know, when on the passenger flight where the stewardess is sort of walking down, and then fucking hell. There's moments in 2001 where I cannot get past them. I just nod off. And I remember thinking, I was watching this film, and I remember thinking, it couldn't get any slower than this. I can feel my soul leaving.
It's going to
my
start
body.
going backwards in a second.
And there's no tension. It's like nothing. At
yeah.
no point do you think, is there any danger? Maybe his mate might get
Yeah.
sucked out or something.
no.
There was nothing. There was
So-
no tension.
So, yeah, there's this kind of, they're sleeping, and then there's this montage, and then there's this trippy.
Well, it's very pheromone
Yeah,
music.
and then there's lights and rainbows, and then that stops, and they wake up, and then there's this super slow, very slow, and then they're in the spaceship, and they're like, okay, so shall we get on the planet now?
Yeah, let's take some photos. Let's find a place to land.
Yeah, let's do that.
Good to go.
So it's like, the tone and pace kind of goes all over the shop. So the next stage is they're going to land on the planet. So they take some readings and they do whatever you do, and then they head down through the atmosphere.
Let's take some photos, and then
Well,
they
they're
have an
trying to find a
instant developed
place.
printer that spits all the photos out on a long little
That's right.
thing that you can look at, and then they say, "Oh yeah, that place there
And
looks good."
It's important to note that the zero gravity the environment that they're in, the photos all fall on the ground.
Yeah. There's no other than moving slowly. There's been no attempt made to make this look like it's zero gravity.
None.
Yeah.
So they're looking for a place to land. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we should compare. One day we should do a show.
all our
on-
crash. All
yeah,
our
yeah. All
crashes.
crash landings on another planet. How
This
does
was
it work?
meant to be a landing. This should have been like when Forbidden Planet or
Well,
something.
you know what they-
actually land because
You know what
there's
they
no
didn't
danger.
do
Nothing
in
went
this
wrong.
landing? They didn't put the landing gear down. Like they had no intentions of landing at all. I remember thinking, where's your landing gear? You're just going to go in barely. And later on, we find out that it actually has skis.
wheels.
There's skis when it comes out later and launches when they launch the Doppelganger. It has skis at least. It didn't have wheels, but at least had skis. Why didn't you lower some kind of landing apparatus?
So they come in at 1,000,000 miles an hour through the atmosphere, and there's sparks and fire, and everything's going wrong, and then they crash, bang, straight into the bloody planet. And,
And
it's
the
like
best place they could find was this mountainous region.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
they crash straight into a mountain. And we've
It's
seen
an
other.
identical planet, and they picked the region that they couldn't find any life forms either in their readings. Is that correct?
This is
No,
the,
I
They-
think-
when they
no, I
scanned
think-
the planet.
did
I
they
can't-
actually? But they never.
Oh, I loved that shot, by the way. There's an awesome shot. Sorry.
It's not is it an identical planet? Like, do the continents look the same? Because I don't think
They never stated.
they
saw
never said that. They
No,
would
I
have.
never saw
They
that.
should have.
There
They would have
was a
said,
statement-
"Ooh, this looks just like our Earth," which they didn't.
I
There
don't know
was
why
a
they
statement later on when they were questioning whether there was this mirror planet. Someone makes reference of, well, when we orbited, did our scans. Is it possible that you can't find life? Well, yes, you can orbit the planet Earth and find very little life if you orbit around a certain way. If you go across the Pacific and then across the Atlantic,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like
You
there's
wouldn't see it.
yeah.
Okay.
There's a way that you can sort of
Miss it.
miss it.
Yeah.
Miss the big cities, you mean?
They make mention of that. Well, in theory, it would be identical, wouldn't it? Like,
Everything else is.
Yeah. In theory, it should be. In fact, look at that picture there.
yeah.
That picture there has a blue. Oh, that might be from the end because there's. Well, anyway, who knows? Who knows? I thought that they might have said, "I'm detecting vegetation" or something or other, but they didn't like go, "Holy fuck! There's fucking plants down here."
Yeah.
It was more like, "Oh yes, vegetation.
Yeah.
Okay then. Yeah, let's move on."
Yep.
So anyway, it was a bit weird. So they crash on the planet. Now, I want to get a little bit meta here because they've crashed on the planet and really, spoilers, even though this is all spoilers, this is actually the copy of Earth on the other side of the sun, right?
Yes.
It's the copy.
Yep.
And so, when they're fumbling around and everything's on fire and he's trying to save poor old John Redshirt who's going to die anyway, and then they see this strange light,
Yes.
right? And then an alien comes down on a rope.
Yes, that's right.
And it's really just a helicopter with somebody about to rescue them.
I think he declares himself as a sea rescue guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
From
and in
Myanmar or
is
somewhere.
from Mongolia.
Mongolia, okay.
And they, of course, wear alien uniforms
As
in
they do.
Mongolia.
Yeah, have you
Mongolia.
ever been?
Oh,
And he had
Can
flippers
you say
on.
that they don't?
well,
He had
no, I
flippers
don't
on,
have
even
anything.
though he was saving them from the mountains.
And there's one other thing. This is why I'm getting meta. Yes, he had flippers on. He had the most ridiculous alien helmet you've ever seen.
Yep.
And he
spoke English.
He spoke English.
And he asked them if they speak English.
He asked them if they speak English. That's all explainable because he's the rescue guy in a helicopter.
Yep.
But he punches Glenn in the face.
Just before that conversation, there's a scuffle.
Yes.
Where isn't a gun pulled? Doesn't Glenn?
Yes, he
Glenn
pulls
pulls
out a gun.
The rescue guy punches him in the face, takes him up into the thing, and then they have a civil conversation about, do you speak English?
Yeah.
Self-defense.
A minute ago, you just tried to shoot me.
So anyway. Oh, there he is there. Yes. Hello, human. Anyway.
It's really quite a crazy outfit.
So, all right. So he gets them back on the space, back on what turns out to be like a helicopter or something rather, and ships them back off to Eurosac or whatever it is where they came
Eurosac.
from.
Eurosac.
And anyway, so now they're back on Earth, and Glenn's come back, and John, the red shirt, we're never going to hear from him again. He's going to die in a few minutes, but he's still clinging on to life. And they stick Glenn in a computer machine to count his bones or whatever they do.
Yep.
And they make some hints about some strange anomalies.
And it is notably watching it, expecting some mirror thing. It's nice noticing that everybody's left-handed.
Oh, I didn't
Because
notice that.
they already have the guy who takes down the
I
thing
didn't
and he's
notice that.
left-handed, and then they go in the next room. The next person writes things down. He's also left-handed.
First thing I noticed was
Very good.
everybody's kerchief is in this side.
I didn't even notice that either.
And the his bomber jacket, the wings, the American wings are on this side as well.
Yeah, okay.
So they went to a lot of trouble of doing these little insignificant, like no one would notice unless you really looked, to try to make things reversed. But the plot of just simply reversing things, it doesn't really work like that. Like,
No, do not try. Do not. No, there's no point.
no. And they knew it. They knew it later on when they say, so what about electricity? Is that reversed? Is the polarity of electricity reversed? We'll never know.
So they're on the other side, the other side of the sun. They're on the other planet,
Yep.
and everything's backwards. So right's left, and left's right, and
And so
forwards is backwards.
what
and
are the
backwards is
things
forwards,
that
and-
lead up to Ross discovering this?
Well, the there almost is a car crash,
He
which is late. Which is
grabs the
late.
steering
He's
wheel off
been in
his
the car
missus.
for several minutes,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
realizing that she's on the wrong side of the road.
Yep. And then he's in the bathroom.
He goes back to his home,
That's right.
and he tries to turn. I like this one. He tries to turn on the light switch, and he reaches for where it usually
It's on
is.
the
and
other
it's
side of the
it's on
door.
The other side of the door.
Yeah. So
In the bedroom, even the bedroom is on the other side of the corridor.
Bed is all reversed around.
Yeah.
And then he's in the bathroom, and he looks in the mirror, and the bottles on the shelf behind him, he can read properly.
Yeah,
Col-
through the mirror.
Big bold font, cologne.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's what you put on aftershave bottles. No branding. It's just it's what it is. It's more important than who makes it.
Beer.
So he sees cologne, and then he has to, and then he turns around, and everything's written backwards. So he's now starting to notice that everything, and apparently, that's all you do to make a mirror world.
Yeah.
Is to write shit backwards and
And
drive
drive on
on
the
the
other
wrong side of the road.
Yep.
And everything else is the same, though.
I wanted everybody to have a mustache and a goatee
Yeah.
that didn't have one in that
Yeah,
world, and the
exactly.
other people who did.
No, that's reserved for Star Trek.
Exactly. And
Because they're not evil. Because I thought, oh yeah, this is the evil
Yeah.
Earth, and there, but
Yeah.
they're not. That
They're just copies. They're
Yeah.
just the
They're-
same.
they're
the same.
They're the same.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Mirror doppelganger as a definition is mirror image, isn't it?
well, it's a duplicate.
Duplicate image.
Yeah,
All right. So then there's a quick.
not an image necessarily. Doppelganger is another person who
Is the same as you.
plays your
But
role.
it's a copy. It's a
He's a copy. He can take over
Direct
when
copy.
you're away. He can go to work for you.
All right. So he starts to freak out in his house, and he throws the cologne around, and
That's what presidents use as a decoy. He's a decoy. That's what it is. It's what Blofeld has when
is it?
James Bond tries to kill him,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
kills him, and you kill the doppelganger,
That's
and
right.
later kills him again, and kills another doppelganger.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, basically he goes crazy. Or he doesn't go crazy, he just starts getting agitated, and his wife calls in the men in white coats.
She doesn't hesitate.
No, she just, hello, my husband's gone bananas.
She is quite the mole in both universes, on both planets. She's thrown him under the bus first.
Yeah, true, that's both
first
planets.
opportunity.
Yeah, it's both planets. He's, getting a raw deal there.
So they turn up. The ambulance turns up, but they leave the stretcher in the ambulance.
Yeah,
and they knock him out.
Yeah.
And then carry him limp out to the stretcher and put him on the stretcher in the driveway, and then put him in the ambulance.
I like how they kind of trick him as well, and they say, "Hello, Mr. Ross," and he says, "Huh? What? Hi. Oh, what's over there, Mr. Ross? What? Something?" Whack! And they knock him in the back of the head.
That's right.
All right, so they take him in there, and he goes back to the base for.
And this is where one of the best scenes of the film comes.
Okay, what's that scene?
It's
Interrogation in the
Oh yes,
with the chair.
in the most incredible interrogation room.
Okay, so
describe the interrogation room, Dan.
well, the room is like a concrete bunker.
Amphitheater.
It's like it's a sort of a tiny amphitheater. It's like a concrete bunker, but there's like a parabolic dish
It's a
into
funnel.
a funnel, and there's a chair,
chair
at
right
the bottom of the funnel.
And then there's two
Everybody-
chairs at the top of the funnel.
Yeah, on either side,
On either side.
opposite sides.
So no one person can ask questions while the other person is
yeah,
in view.
You see the back of his head. And I like how he walks down the stairs, and he's sort of slowly walking down the stairs and looks around, and he's like, "This isn't the debriefing room. This is the interrogation room." Yes, Mr. Ross.
So in comes Mr. Security and the wet blanket chick.
And so they're going to grill him because it turns out that they think that he's come back early
That's right.
from the trip.
Yeah.
And they're
did
like,
you
turn
turn
around?
Yeah, why did you turn around?
Because that's so easy. That makes perfect sense.
Yes.
You have a huge rocket ship to get you going this direction at 1,000 miles an hour, and then you just turn around.
Yeah.
Just came back.
Yeah.
So he's gone 3 weeks. They're expecting him to be gone 6 weeks, and so why has he come back? And he keeps saying, "No, I didn't come back. I didn't come back. I went and did all the things I was supposed to do." And they kind of don't believe him.
Yep.
All right, so
The whole time they're taking turns at asking questions.
and that's why he's on the swivel
And he's-
chair, because he has to swivel to one.
And it's a
swivel to
very
the other one.
disorienting scene for him and for the viewer.
But then they start to cotton on. Eventually, they start to kind of work
Finally.
it out, and they give him a test. They hold up a mirror. And
Well, they
hold
already
up
knew anyway because they did the scan at the start. Then it's already
but they
turns
weren't
out
sure.
Yeah, he
the
was
organs
keeping
are the right or wrong way around.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
liver is
Keeping
on the
it
left.
still.
And so they started working out. Then they do a few tests, and he can read writing in the
We can
mirror.
read
and-
reverse.
That was the
writing.
test. That was the final proof
Yeah.
that he could read from the mirror.
And then John, who cares, dies.
Yeah.
He's in a metal tube, and
Yeah.
and Jason goes and hassles him one last time.
And he really served no purpose
Yeah.
at all. He pulled the Ross out of the burning.
He gave Ross somebody
craft.
to talk to in terms of
In the-
expository dialogue
Absolutely.
every now and again on
But
the
he could
spaceship.
have died in the crash, right?
Yep.
If not for the fact that he pulled Ross out of the crash,
Mm.
then
But he didn't have to do that.
and then catches fire and
Whatever happened.
whatever.
It was a nice crash.
But reality, he
Doesn't really do anything.
doesn't do
No.
anything beyond that.
No.
All
I
right,
don't
so-
know.
So there's no story point.
The audio was pretty low. Does he say any dying words to
think so.
Andrew Webb when he goes in and talks to him?
I can't remember the character. I
I
can't
just
remember
remember
what he
Andrew
said.
I think
can't
he
screaming
remember
through
what he
the glass.
Looks
Yes.
and dies.
He said something, but I couldn't remember what it was or the significance of it. It was just
Yeah.
the definition of a forgettable character.
Yeah.
All right, so he dies. All right, cool.
Yep.
And then we get another trippy drug sequence. So this is our second one because Glenn's in they're pumping him up with drugs after the interrogation
sodium
and all of that
pentothal
stuff.
or
And so
something
we
like
get
that,
into
yeah.
another,
Yeah.
trippy drug sequence. But now we're coming to the conclusion.
Yep.
And I've got here the next story beat, which is the important story beat, which is where everything arrives at the conclusion, which is the discussion
Mm-hmm.
with Glenn and Jason. Right? So Glenn's in this room where he is, and he calls in Jason and says, all right, we've got to have a talk. And Glenn is going to now explain what he thinks has happened
That's right.
to Jason.
Yep.
And so he says, look, what's happened is there's 2 planets and there's 2 rockets, and the 2 rockets passed each other, and the 2 rockets landed on either planet, and you and I have never met before, you know? There's another Jason, and now they're standing in front of a mirror. There's another Jason and another Glenn on the other side of the sun. And eventually Jason kind of agrees that that's the case. That's what's actually happened.
Yeah.
And they have this cool scene, one of the best scenes I thought in the movie, where it's like, you know, they sort of shake hands, and it's like, well, pleased to meet you, Jason, you know. And
He puts out the wrong hand.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, he puts out the wrong hand. So, we got to bring this to a conclusion now.
Yeah.
The thing is that they don't have any evidence of this.
No, that's right.
Okay, but the evidence that they can get is the lunar whatever ship that he arrived on.
It's got the scans.
Yeah. So they have to go back up to orbit to grab that spaceship and bring it back down again and show the world. However, there's another plot point, and that is that Jason has been keeping it quiet that Glenn came back 3 weeks early. He's been keeping it quiet, you know?
Oh, from Glenn?
No, from the rest of the world.
No, they were interrogating him about...
Well, they were on the base.
Oh, okay.
Didn't hit
But-
the newspapers.
I've
is what
got
But
you're
they
saying.
kept the Mongolian helicopter pilot quiet, and he didn't know anything, and those are the only people. So it's really now, it's only Jason and Glenn who actually know the full truth. A few other people on the base know a few things, but they don't know everything.
Yep.
So he's been keeping it quiet, and he's been keeping it quiet because they paid $1,000 million billion for this, and he's like, you know, if he's fucked this up,
And he turned around early.
you know, the shit's gonna hit the fan.
Yep.
So their plan is to go back up into space and grab the orbiter and bring it back down. And so they put that plan into motion. And what they do is they refit the front of the ship so that the plug that plugs into things all connects together, and the polarity is all correct and everything. And
So they think.
so they think. And they send Glenn up into space, and he tries to plug into the other ship, and everything goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then his ship falls out the back of the other ship and starts to crash.
It goes through some automatic jettison
Something or other.
process and spits the docking ship out the back.
And then it starts to crash, and the guys on the ground are trying to use, like, I don't know what they have some, like, gigantic magnet. They're trying to, not literally, but they're trying to pull the ship closer to them using their auto something or other.
Auto
flying
landing
something.
system, yep.
And that's what, because they lose control. And then happily for the writers of the story, the spaceship with Glenn is now on a missile death trajectory straight towards the base that it came from.
Yep.
And it goes down there like a nuclear rocket and blows the whole thing to pieces.
Just takes it all out.
Yes.
Yeah, including the submersible buildings that can go underground.
Yeah. Blows up everything.
Yep.
Then we insta-cut to Jason 20 years later. He's in a retirement home, and he's
Well, it's probably in a loony bin.
in a loony bin. And he's saying, and all the evidence was lost, and all of the data tapes were gone, and nobody ever believed me.
And he's talking to himself outside. Like,
Talking to himself. We imagine that he says that to himself every day or something or other.
in his wheelchair.
He's gone bananas.
Yep.
And his nurse brings him inside,
Mm-hmm.
and he sees a mirror, and so he decides to run his wheelchair into it and crash and die.
And then at the end.
And that's the end.
That's it. That's literally it.
We don't even see the crash and die, do we?
No.
We just see him running towards the mirror. And
We
that's the
hear
end.
the noise of the crashing glass, and then there's the psychedelic, cloudy, coloured stuff gets flashed up,
Mm-hmm.
and then the end.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I must say that film made a bigger impression to a younger me.
Yep.
Which is why I had always wanted to see the
Yep.
ending.
Well, all of that exposition and all of the characters and all that wouldn't mean anything to young kids that are looking at that stuff,
That cool stuff.
because that's cool stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Models.
There's
The
no
models,
digital. There's no digital world, and he is the best on the planet at the time to do these miniatures. There was no one doing it as good as he was, as far as this scientific, engineered, technology-based miniatures.
So, My thoughts on the ending are I was pretty disappointed with the ending.
Yeah.
I thought that the people who wrote it, when you write science fiction or any stories really, they're a kind of an exploration about what would it be like if aliens came to our planet? What would it be like if you had a teleportation machine, and then you go off and explore. This one is, what would it be like if there's another planet on the other side of the world?
Yep.
What would it be like? And the kind of answer that the story gives us is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. And then you wake up and it's kind of mostly a dream.
Yep.
And then you go on with your life.
It felt like there's no, in the film, there is no, you need a purpose to strive for, and then you need to reach that goal and then see what comes of it, right? This film felt like it was not, it wasn't, it didn't really have a purpose.
It was meant to let us believe that this could be real, right? Because we have never heard of it. Why, if there was another planet on the other side of the sun, we would have heard about it. This explains to us why we would not have heard about it. Because all the evidence was lost and nobody knows about it anymore.
Yeah.
Lets us think after and, maybe it's, what if it is true?
So I was thinking I'd write a better ending. So let me
I
pitch
would have
to
written
you.
a better starting. I would have
Different film.
No,
Many thousands and thousands of people have
If the
written
whole
I would have
different
made a
process-
films.
shorter film that's about 15 minutes long that's
you can
exactly the
change-
same.
You can change the premise ever so slightly to make it more interesting by the reason we know the planet is there is that we've received some kind of message. We don't know what it means, but we know that it's in English or understandable, it's mathematic or something, and that's all we know. So we've got to go, right? At the moment, we just found a planet, right? And
Which is a little cheap. It does feel a little cheap,
there's a whole
doesn't
bunch
it?
of other planets. Why aren't we going to those? You know what I mean? Like there was no real reason for going.
It
It wasn't like it was a planet of gold or there was,
yeah.
You gave me no reason to go and spend $1 trillion, right? And then when I got there was no like
I didn't get my $1 trillion worth.
well, I didn't have a reason for going anyway.
Yeah.
So I achieved my goal just by getting here. Even if I crashed into your mountain, that's what I was supposed to do because really I wasn't asked to do anything else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's what was missing in this film for me as a narrative.
Okay, I want to picture my ending.
Yeah.
Jason is a bit of a jerk. He kills people. Right?
Well, he does.
He killed that dude. Even though he was a bad guy who was stealing things, he
the
was
bad
like,
guy.
fuck it, we're just going to kill him. Just
And
kill
he,
him.
He almost killed his mate John.
I was pretty...
On a couple of
While I was
occasions.
watching it, I was like, is Jason going to kill John? Turns out, no, it was a big accident.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my better ending. Is that Jason, after he talks to Glenn about... after he talks to Glenn... And they talk about the mirror, and then he gets put in his mind that there's another Jason on that other planet.
Yeah.
And then, but he's also got the $1,000 million billion euro things on his back. And so, shit's going to hit the fan, and he's got to kind of work out how he's going to get himself out of this. And so he comes up with the plan that what he's going to do is he's going to kill Glenn. He's going to send Glenn back up to orbit secretly, and then let Glenn come back again and burn him up in the atmosphere and he'll die.
Yeah.
And then Jason can wash his hands in front of the $1 million billion and say, look, Glenn fucked
Blame-
it up.
blame it on the
well.
But hang on, what would be what's his problem in the first place? The mission was a success. There is another. They learned.
No. The mission isn't a success in the way that I'm writing it because he came back early and he kind of didn't have any information or he didn't have enough information.
Yeah.
Bear with me here. Bear with me here.
If you take him out, you can blame the whole thing on the astronaut, which he probably did.
So
didn't
that's
he?
his plan, right? This is his plan. Okay, he might find a few plot holes, but we'll patch those up later.
Yeah.
Right? But here's the kicker.
Yeah.
Is that all the time that he's thinking of this plan and organizing it, we spend a bit of time in the story with the camera watching him plan it and organize it. All the time, the whole time, he's looking in the mirror. And he's looking in the mirror because he knows that the other Jason on the other side of the
probably
sun
is
doing the same thing. And he's like giving a wink to that other Jason and he's like, yeah, you and me, buddy.
Yeah.
And then he kills Glenn. And then there's the big, the press meeting, and he's like, "Oh, it's such a shame that Glenn died. Oh well," and then just then, another Glenn turns up in orbit,
Yeah.
right?
He was successful.
And then he looks in the mirror and he's like, "You fucking, you double crossed me, you prick."
I like it. I like it. That would work.
So the answer to the question of what would happen if they're the same,
Yeah.
they might not always be the same. They
And I
might
think
change.
that's one of the problems I got with this whole mirror thing, right? Where the writing's backwards. The people drive on the opposite side. It's opposite stuff, right? So why are they doing the same things on the other planet? Why are we assuming the characters are all assuming
Because
that
the characters
right,
are the same. They have evolved to
right
that
now,
very
this
moment to be
person
married
is
to the
in
same person.
office as
yes,
that
wearing the
person.
same clothes.
If you go back to the question of what would it be like if there was a copy of the planet over there, the kind of cool, the boring answer is, yes, they're always the same and they do everything the same and they're all the same. But the kind of cool answer is, well, what if they're not exactly the same?
Yeah,
Well, that's
you
what
know?
the Star Trek mirror universe is, which doesn't make any sense either because everybody kills each other and still they're all married to the same people.
Well,
Have
in
the
the
same
story that I
positions.
write as well, it puts Jason on the kind of evil planet. He's the evil one,
Yeah.
and the other Jason, maybe he kills a few people every now and again, but he's kind of the good one. He sends Glenn
he only
back.
kills a few people, so therefore he's the good guy. Yeah.
I don't think there's any way that the opposite dimension thing can ever work. Like it's impossible to hold it up. Like you because of that reason, you can't have opposite things and then have all these things that are the same. So therefore, if it's opposite, it'll all be opposite, and therefore I won't look like me. I'll look totally different. My hair will be different color. I'll have different. Everything about me will be.
You
different.
won't even
So I
exist
won't
because
even
your
be-
parents never met.
So therefore, I won't be me, and neither will you be you, and all the rest of it. And so the whole fucking thing doesn't work. And the only way it can work is if you play funny buggers with the rules.
Yep.
It's opposite for traffic, and it's
Yeah,
opposite
yeah,
for
yeah.
light switches.
They don't talk
Just like you,
opposite.
just
It's
like
right,
you
they
need a
don't talk
huge,
backwards.
Yes.
big ass rocket to launch on one planet,
Yeah.
but then a just little glider to launch from the other.
Well, clocks tick backwards,
Yeah, yeah,
right? But we don't talk backwards.
yeah,
They read backwards, but they don't talk backwards.
yeah. So only some of it's.
So the plot it's
full.
full of holes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. So it's problematic to start with. But like I said, my biggest problem is as a film, you need a purpose for a journey. It's a journey film, like it's going from point A to point B. Right. We're prepping for it.
And that's the
We're
problem.
going on the journey, and we're reaching the destination. The problem is, there's no motivation for the trip. There's no tell me why you're going, and so that at least I know that you failed or that you achieved it.
Yeah, we didn't really go anywhere. It was just like, and it had
So
that
it's hard to
kind
get
of.
on board.
I woke up and it was all a dream ending.
Yeah, and the characters. Who do you give a fuck about in this film? No one.
No one really.
There's no one.
No.
No one in the
No,
film you give
no.
a fuck about.
No.
There's
Relate to
only
or-
one person that you get close to, which is the web guy, the Andrew. What was his name?
Jason.
Jason Webb. He's the
But
one.
he's unlikable, really.
But he's
a jerk,
unlikable.
and
That's right.
he's,
He's the only one we get close enough to understand has a purpose bigger than this thing, and he's a dickhead. So, yeah. I don't know. Without the spectacular miniatures and special effects, it'd be a terrible film. So let's rate it.
Okay.
Tom?
Borrow.
Borrow.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've been waiting long enough to see it.
Yep.
I'm glad I saw it.
Yep.
I kind of loved it.
Mm.
I loved loads of things about it. The miniatures and the skivvies and the clopping around on, hard floors and the buttons and the tape decks and the music and the... But yeah, we've just
If we
sort of-
look back over our shows, all of our shows, that you're the only person that can say, I kind of loved it. Like love is an extreme like.
an
Like
extreme digital
it's
thing.
an extreme version
Yeah.
of like, and you kind of loved it.
Well, it's like the same Dan who just said that the guy who kills only a few people is kind of the good guy.
Yeah. It's all relative, man.
I
It's
give
all
it.
relative.
I give it 3 unicorns. It's frogs, Dan. It's frogs. So buy, borrow. What are you doing with it?
I don't think it raises up to buy, so it's a borrow.
So you wouldn't have it in the collection, but you definitely.
Yeah, you should
wouldn't
watch
mi-
it.
if you came across it on a Saturday evening or something. on
If
telly,
you have a player with speed control,
Yes.
Yes. And your Saturday evening's boringer and slower than
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's definitely watch it once, borrow,
Yep.
watch once. Yeah.
I agree. I'm on the same. I would borrow it. Although I'm leaning towards buy, mainly because of Anderson's legacy.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got his. It is Anderson.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got his documentary, which I highly recommend. It came out a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, and it's the
Super Marionation-a-thon.
Super Marionation.
Whatever it is called.
And if you get the Blu-ray version,
Uh-huh.
it comes with 2 discs. One has, I think, the pilot episode of all of his different shows. So is it Red Scarlet or something? He did one was Red Scarlet. He did the Stingray, all of the TV shows. There's a massive documentary, goes for nearly 3 hours, on how they got up and running, who they were, where they came from, the relationships that they had to get up and running, where the money came from, who were their early producers that sort of funded them. A lot of that early work was done from a country house in England, where they set fire to it at least half a dozen times because they were really playing with chemicals and gunpowder and all sorts of shit to do the things that they were doing.
Yeah.
And it was all in, and then they sort of went out and got a sound stage and went broke a couple of times. The wife is very, she played Lady Penelope. She's the co-producer.
Voiced it, yeah.
She's the co-producer of
And
this
the
film.
writer as well, or something?
Of this film,
Yeah, let me check.
maybe. She wrote it. Yeah, Sylvia Anderson and Jerry Anderson. And Sylvia Anderson was still alive and kicking up until recently. She might even still be alive, because she put her blessing on and provided the voice for the brand new Thunderbirds that Weta are doing. Pukako
For the same for Lady Penelope.
for Lady Penelope,
Okay.
for the senior Lady Penelope.
Yeah.
There's a junior Lady Penelope in that new series. I think she played a different role, but she provided the voice. As far as I'm aware, she's still alive and she died in 2016. But she was a driving force in a lot of these. She was the one that fed the crew and made sure everybody, and she provided the voice for a lot of the characters and stuff like that. I think I can hear her voice in announcements happening in the background of this film.
Oh, yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, which is Gene Roddenberry's wife provided the computer voice in Star
Richard
Trek.
Barrett, yeah.
Whenever you heard the computer talking in Star Trek, it was her. I highly recommend that Super Marionation documentary for anyone's collection, because it's a real testament and celebration of a pretty cool moment in time where miniatures were holding their own on a episodic television series.
Now, did he only build miniatures for his own shows, or did he
No.
actually do? Are there other films that are totally unrelated to this sort of fantastic sci-fi
Similar
that will have?
Well, he did a lot of the miniatures for some of the 007 stuff.
This is Derek Meddings, who I've got up here. He's the visual and special effects soup. And, GoldenEye,
Yep.
Moonraker.
Well, a lot of the earlier stuff like Moonraker and, there's a James Bond film where the nemesis is an underwater guy and he's got this big dome
Shit, which is
type.
that one?
The plot is that he is gobbling up nuclear submarines.
That's
with,
right.
at the start.
Yeah.
Well, all those models and miniatures are Jerry Anderson's crew.
Yeah, right.
So, he did a lot of that stuff. A lot of the miniature work for James Bond films. Because they were the best. It'd be like Harryhausen doing
Yeah,
the
but
creature
James
stuff.
Bond is another fantastic kind of miniature. He has weird weapons. I wonder if they also did stuff that is more subtle.
I'm not sure. You'd have to really... There was nothing I saw in that... there were things that weren't so sci-fi. I know he did children's television puppetry stuff.
Doctor Who
There
and
were
all sorts
there
of
were
things like that.
westerns and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
This is Derek Meddings we're talking about.
No, well, Jerry Anderson. Meddings worked for Anderson.
Yeah.
But this was his genre, really.
And this is probably the peak of their skills
so.
at this. This is really their...
I think so. And when you consider it's 1969, right? They were doing some awesome stuff. cinematically, like lensing wise and things like that.
Mhm.
They'd love the lenses that were used on, say, Lord of the Rings. You know, Lord of the Rings were using those bigatures, which were about the same scale as a lot of the stuff that they did in this, but they didn't have the lenses back then that would do the depth of field that Lord of the Rings were able to do. So you get that really
And the compositing
that
skills
shallow
to make it look not like a miniature. I mean,
Absolutely.
everything here looks like a miniature.
it's that shallow fall off, that tilt shift effect that you get naturally with miniatures, the macro fall off with depth of field. We got a lot better at that by the time we were doing miniatures for Star Wars films and for Lord of the Rings and that sort of stuff. It's a pity because we got so good at it, and then along came digital, and then there's really no need to build that shit anymore. There was a little
Just for nostalgia.
honeymoon period there where they thought, oh, you still get better detail in miniatures. No, you don't. Not anymore. You can really work all that detail in. All right.
Very good.
So that's it for another show, another week. Anything exciting coming up, gentlemen? Tom, you're going on a hiatus for a little while.
Going away for 2 weeks to sit on a beach at the coral reef.
Beautiful. So where are you going? We're far north Queensland?
No, South Queensland. So sort of just north of Brisbane.
Noosa.
East of Gladstone.
Not Harvey Bay.
No, southern tip of the Great Barrier Reef. So it's already
okay.
Coral Sea.
Yeah.
But it's the southern end. It's the
Mackay.
Capricorn Bunker Group.
Coast. Yeah.
A little island called Lady Musgrave.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing there except for a composting toilet. That's the only building and a tower with a light on top. A little lighthouse tower.
I'm sure you'll have a
There's nothing
fantastic time.
I will.
Sounds awesome.
It is the thing I look most forward to is that there's no reception. There's no way to charge a phone. There's just no electronics for 2 weeks.
Because you're a diver, right? And I've tracked the demise of aqua tourists in Australia over the last 30 years.
You're seeing only the negatives.
And there's a lot of places up the east coast of Australia where we used to hunt whales, right? Australia was a pretty serious whaling colony for a long time. And all the way from Eden all the way up to North Queensland or mid sort of Queensland coast. And especially Harvey Bay and the area that you're talking about, they're whaling stations, and they were whaling stations for nearly 100 years. And when you cut open whale carcasses on a daily basis for decades, it brings
I think there's a knowledge, there's a meme, there's a memory in the shark brains of that area that they know that there's good food to be had, even though they haven't seen any in decades.
There's some big bites up there.
There's tiger sharks. We're exactly around that island.
It's the tigers that I worry about.
Yeah.
They're aggressive and they'll eat anything.
Well, I'll be on the next show if I don't get eaten by a shark.
All right.
You'll be represented by a holograph on the next show.
Might do a pre-recording.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect segue for us to egress out of here, and a segue into Stingrays.
Ah, yes, we can play a bit of the Stingray opening, which is another Jerry Anderson.
All right, so 30 seconds of
Stand
Stingray.
by for action.
Exact same music, probably the same composer.
We are about to launch Stingray.
Like it's just identical. The down through the ceiling,
Even the music.
like you can imagine him pitching it. I've got a brand new series. Okay, how is it different from Thunderbirds?
Well, let me sing you a little song.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
Yeah, I love that.
Submersible buildings again, yes.
And this,
Yeah, no, that's classic with the fish.
What the heck?
a robot fish
It's a robot fish
chasing a
chasing.
submarine. All right, we'll get copyright killed by people. All right, then. Check us out on YouTube,
Okay. Yep.
Voyage of the Geek. Check us out on Twitter, Voyage of the Geek.
Facebook,
Thanks for watching, everybody.
all the socials. Till next time, bye for me.
Auf
Bye-bye.
Wiedersehen.
What is your membership? How many of you